Attachments are a great way to make video game guns feel more unique, and they let you fine-tune the weapon to your playstyle, but some attachments throughout Call of Duty history, they've been a little too good, or perhaps they were just a little too cheesy and they earned themselves a bad reputation. What is up, everybody? Jimmy or Chaos. Today, we're going to be talking about what I think are the 20 most hated attachments ever put in Call of Duty multiplayer. You let me know in the comments which COD attachment you hated the most. Drop a like, and I have to address this really quick. Somebody on the last video said you are 100% using AI as your commentary in your video. I can tell. It just blew me away. I've never used AI for my voice at all, but I thought it was absolutely hilarious, so I wanted to share it with you guys and let everybody know. There is no AI Jimmy here. It is me with all the mistakes and errors and everything and cuts that we have always, all the time. Just had to put that out there. At number 20, the thermal scope. Now, this is a staple of COD. It's perfectly possible to use it respectfully, but several thermal scopes throughout the franchise, they've been too easy to abuse. Black Ops 3 1, the Ghost versions immediately stick out in my head. I have memories of running around the gigantic maps of COD Ghost only to get lit up by somebody from 200 yards away who was sitting on a vantage point with their face pressed firmly against their thermal scope for the entire match. Again, there's plenty of ways to use the thermal scope in a diligent, honorable way. But there was also way too many people who abused the way they lit enemies up from across the map, and I think it's a good way to start today's list. Before we move on, guys, if you're looking to get Dune Awakening, it's already at g2a.com. The link is at the top of the description. Go take advantage. At number 19, the MMS. Now, this optic only appeared one time in COD history, and that was in Black Ops 2. Now, it was largely overshadowed by a certain other optic that we'll talk about later, but the MMS was still an extremely hated part of the game, especially if you were playing on PC. It was a short-range optic that would send out this little vision pulse every few seconds that would let you see people through walls. Literally see people through walls. Now remember, the vision pulse ability in Black Ops 3, that's what we got here. I mean, it was literally just that ability, but put on an optical attachment on top of your gun so you could get it whenever you held the gun up to your eyeball. Now naturally, the MMS was seen as a cheap part of the game. Largely looked down upon, but every once in a while, you would find somebody using it on a foul or a scar, and it would just let them spray targets through walls without consequence. You know who you are, and also I think you could see them through smoke as well. At number 18, the Underbarrel drill charge. The rebooted Modern Warfare series expanded the Underbarrel launcher meta. Why? I don't know. Made lots of different ammo options for various launchers, and while this did shake things up, I guess in a fun way for some people, went a little too far. For example, the Underbarrel drill charge, I'm just going to label it stupid. It was literally a drill charge launcher you could load onto the bottom of your assault rifle and spam at anybody you saw. You didn't have to sacrifice your lethal equipment slot on handheld drill charges, and most of the assault rifles didn't need 5 attachments to be good, so you could put it on your gun for free in most cases. And since there was almost always somebody using supply boxes on your team, you could just keep resupplying. I mean, I guess it was good for clearing out campers, and that's always a good thing, but if you were going up against somebody just running and spamming them across the map, it's pretty annoying. Let's stick with the theme. Underbarrel Snapshot. In Modern Warfare 2019, similar to the Underbarrel drill charge, this attachment was widely hated, but for different reasons. This attachment lets you put a snapshot grenade launcher on your rifle, which made you the best player in the game if you were playing a round-based mode like Search and Destroy. Simply equip the snapshot grenade launcher to your rifle, and then at the start of the round, fire your snapshot grenade across the map at the enemy spawn point, and your team would instantly get a good look at which direction the enemy team was going and which bomb site needed extra attention. This was a super cheap way to do things, and way too powerful. At number 16, 100-round AR magazines. Now, there haven't been many examples of this throughout COD history, but there have been a few, and that's enough to get it on the list today. Extended mags have been around for a long time, but in a few of the post-Warzone COD games, there were 100-round drum mags available for some of the assault rifles, and that's just too far. A 100-round mag should be reserved for LMGs. If you're going to have the ability to spray 100 rounds at someone, you should be punished with slow movement and bulky recoil like what LMGs usually have to offer. But when you can slap a 100-round mag on something like the Kilo 141 or the XM4, there is no consequence for the spraying power because the movement penalties aren't nearly strong enough to make you feel like you're actually at a disadvantage for equipping it. 100-round mags should never be on assault rifles in Call of Duty. At number 15, high caliber. This attachment was part of COD for several of the PS4 era games, and nobody liked it. On one hand, it would give you a hefty increase to your headshot bonus damage, which that rewarded precision. On the other hand, it made the game feel really inconsistent because the default headshot damage was turned way down in order to compensate for it. So you would pop somebody in the head 3 or 4 times and they would walk it off as if you had shot them in the foot. Meanwhile, a high caliber user could just shoot you 2 or 3 times with the same gun and you're gone. It also didn't help that the view kick system in games like Black Ops 3 and COD World War II and even Infinite Warfare made it so your gun would almost always kick straight up when you got shot. So if you were aiming at somebody's chest and they shot back at you, you got a free headshot kill. Now I can see why developers thought high caliber was a good idea in practice, but it really made the gunfights feel very inconsistent. At number 14, extended mags in the World at War version. Now, extended mags are perfectly fine, and we always expect them in Call of Duty games, but if you were playing World at War back in the day, you probably remember just how frustrating they could get because of how big they were. Here's an example. The PPS-H1 had a default mag of 35 rounds, but with extended, it jacked up to 70. The infamously overpowered MP40 had a 32-round mag by default, but with extended, 64. And the only punishment would slow you down with your reload animation by about 0.2 seconds. So it was a crutch attachment. Extended mags are a staple of Call of Duty, but they were kind of busted in World at War, and everybody who played the game remembers getting frustrated at somebody just running mindlessly, spamming them. At number 13, Stock 2. Yep, Stock 2. I mean, it's another attachment that was part of COD for a long time. Nobody had a problem with it, but in Black Ops 4, Treyarch decided to add Stock 2 to the mix for certain weapons. That's when things got out of control. Stock 2 would let you move at full speed while aiming down the sights of your gun with no penalty to your accuracy whatsoever, which meant you could zip around corners, run right through enemy lines, and you would still maintain that perfect ADS accuracy. Now, on certain guns like the SOG SMG, Stock 2 was borderline overpowered. If you were going up against a pub stomper or CDL player, there was a 100% chance they had this. At number 12, Slug rounds. They've been part of certain shotguns by default, but they turned into attachments starting with Modern Warfare 2019. Now, certain COD games have been pretty useless when it comes to slug rounds. Other games have been absolutely ridiculous with them, and if you played a game like Black Ops 6, slug rounds could absolutely ruin your day. They drastically increase the one-shot kill range on shotguns, and if you're going up against someone who has decent aim or is just camping in a really cheesy spot, it can be infuriating. Nothing is worse than getting instantly killed by somebody using a shotgun from 30 to 40 feet away. At number 11, the Monolithic suppressor. It was one of the most spammed attachments in the original Warzone, and it got to the point that many people were asking for it to either be reworked or removed from the game entirely. This thing would take your shots off enemy minimaps. It would increase your damage range. It would speed up your bullet velocity. So it kept you off the radar, made it easier to erase people from range, and there really wasn't any consequence for you using it. Yes, you had to aim down the sight slightly slower. But since this was an attachment meant to be used at mid-range combat, that's not a problem. Monolithic suppressor was a crutch attachment in Warzone 2020, and even though it made every gun sound really cool, it's probably a little too good for the kind of game that Warzone was supposed to be. Now, I'm not going to deny I'm a bit nostalgic for it, though. We all knew it was busted, but we had it on every single class. At number 10, the Bayonet. In older COD games, everybody had a one-hit kill melee attack in the form of a knife. But starting with Black Ops 3, the melee is now a 2-hit kill since your character uses the butt of their gun to smack the target instead of magically pulling out a knife, killing you. It's more realistic, but it also made that bayonet-style attachment more frustrating. COD World War II had bayonets available for all the rifles. Black Ops 4 even had a pistol bayonet, and there were several other attachments in recent games that magically turn your gun into a one-hit kill melee. The reason why it was so hated is simple. You can't see it coming if you're on the receiving end. All you see is a character holding a gun, so naturally you expect them to have that standard 2-hit kill melee attack, but when you get too close and boom, you're instantly dead because they clicked the melee button, you're like, what happened? When everyone had a 1-hit kill melee attack, it wasn't an issue. It was fair, it was balanced. But when everyone has a 2-hit kill melee attack and you can secretly turn your melee attack into an insta-kill, people get upset. At number 9, the heartbeat sensor. Who remembers when this was an attachment? Back in classic MW2 and MW3, you could slap a heartbeat sensor onto a barrel of your AR and run around with this constant personal UAV sweep. Now, there was a couple perks in the classic games that could counter the heartbeat sensor, but it was still a super cheesy part of the game that took a lot of situational awareness out of the equation. Why would you need to pay attention to your surroundings when you could literally just put a free UAV on the barrel of your gun? At number 8, the target finder. Easily the most hated optic in COD history. It appeared in Black Ops 2 and it never came back. I wonder why. Close range optic that would take up most of your screen, but if anybody walked into the frame, they got this big red diamond painted right on them, making them easy pickings for the user. So people would equip the target finder to an LMG, find a corner, find a nice vantage point, hold down the left trigger, and just sit there and wait for people to walk into their field of view. At which point, You just point at the big red diamond on your screen and light them up before they could have anything to they didn't even see you. It was an optic that was only used by campers and spammers, and for that it earned the place as the most hated Hall of Fame. And also, here's a trivia question. With extended mags, how many bullets could you start off with your LSAT? Let me know. At number 7, select fire and full auto. Black Ops 2 was the very first COD game to introduce some kind of select fire attachment to various guns. And for this entry on the list, I'm just going to lump all the select fire type attachments into one entry. Now, there's plenty of attachments throughout COD history that turn semi-auto or burst fire weapons into fully automatic ones, and they're almost always game-breaking in some way. Heck, even back in the original Black Ops 2 appearance, the select fire attachment led to several nerfs because the burst fire weapons, they were just way too powerful when used in full auto, obviously. You want to turn a full auto weapon into a single fire or burst fire weapon, okay. But attachments that turn burst fire weapons into full auto, I mean, that was definitely going to provoke some rage quits, and it did. At number 6, rapid fire. Another attachment that's been around for a long, long time, and it's taken on several different places in the customization menu. Sometimes it's a fire mod, sometimes it's a gun perk, sometimes it's built into a different attachment. But you guys know where we're going here. Any attachment that drastically speeds up the fire rate of a gun is going to be a major point of criticism in the community, especially in the newer games where the gunsmith system means you can do more or less anything. You can eliminate any of the penalties that should come with speeding up the fire rate. Back in the day, using a rapid fire attachment would at least increase your recoil pretty significantly, but now, just throw on an extra attachment or two and entirely offset any recoil penalties that come with speeding up your time to kill. Several guns over the last few years have been totally busted with rapid fire. I had to squeeze it in the list somewhere. Now we arrive at the top 5. Akimbo. Now, it's not technically an attachment, I know that, but I think it should qualify for the list because it takes up an attachment slot, and it's absolutely infuriating to go up against in most cases. Being able to run around with 2 guns at once is pretty cool, but if you're on the receiving end, it just means you're going to get killed twice as fast by somebody doing their best to get as close to you as they can. It also doesn't help that the Akimbo attachment is often paired with some of the most obnoxious guns in the game. Full auto pistols, fire shotguns, super fun to use, absolutely hated by most of the community for how annoying they were to go up against. At number 4, the Skull Splitter. One-time attachment, Black Ops 4, would make the Mozu Revolver an insta-kill to the head from any distance on the map. Didn't matter. Sound cool, definitely fun to use. Also one of the most controversial parts of the game because this was also a game where the time to kill was much longer than normal. So you'd run around the map, have to shoot somebody 6 to 7 times or more before killing them, or you could just click on their head one time with a dinky little revolver and they hit the floor. I know, it took up a lot of slots on your pick 10, but who cared? I mean, it made you feel like Clint Eastwood in an old Western movie, but it was a massive balancing problem. And, speaking of Black Ops 4 attachments, at number 3, the Strobe Light. I didn't forget it. The Strobe Light was available for the SG-12 shotgun, had to be one of the most infuriating things ever put in a COD game. By holding down the left trigger, you would activate a strobe light on the barrel of your gun, which would not only blind anybody who got too close to you, but it would also disable the aim assist of anybody who was affected by it, which meant it was almost impossible to counter with certain range. Could AI do that with one breath? If you were hit with the strobe light, you might as well have just put down the controller, walked away, because not only would you not be able to see them, but you were going to be at a hefty disadvantage while fighting back, because even if you did get your gun out, the lack of aim assist meant they were just going to strafe out of your reticle and blow you away. I'm glad it never came back. Frankly, not really sure why it was put in the game. Pretty sure it was a troll. At number 2, the grenade launcher. Noob tubes, I mean, they were one of the original gun attachments all the way back in COD 4, and even though they were nerfed and reworked it a few times, their legacy lives on. Their appearance in classic Modern Warfare 2 was so dominant and game-breaking that people have nightmares about getting cross-mapped by somebody sitting in a corner and endlessly resupplying them with one-man army. But sometimes the crazy Modern Warfare 2 version of the grenade launcher causes people to forget they've been in a lot of COD games. The original COD 4 version of the grenade launcher was nuts. The OG Black Ops version, extremely strong. You put it on an AK-74U for some reason, we still don't know why to this day. And the Black Ops 2 version, insanely underrated. Underbarrel grenade launchers were deleted from COD for several years before being brought back in the Warzone era, and they're nowhere near as strong as they were, but they're still one of the most hated attachments ever put in a multiplayer FPS. If somebody gets caught using a noob tube in COD multiplayer, they're going to get roasted by the game chat. Now, number 1 today, I'm going to go with incendiary shells. They were introduced to COD multiplayer with COD World War II, and right from out of the gate, people were asking for them to be removed. Shotguns are annoying enough, but being able to set your target on fire and finish off their remaining health without even having to shoot again, that's too much. But surprisingly, despite all the backlash towards the fire shotguns in COD World War II, incendiary shells they've appeared in every single COD game since. and they're hated every single time. I have no clue why fire shotguns keep coming back, because everyone agrees they're cheesy and detrimental to the game as a whole, but here they are. One reason or another, they keep coming back every single year. You already know they're going to be back in Black Ops 7. There's a really close ranking between this and Noob Tubes, but ultimately, I think this deserves the top spot, because even though Noob Tubes were hated, they were at least nerfed and even straight up removed for a long time. Incendiary shells, they refuse to go away. They just keep making the game less fun every single time they're brought back. Let me know 2 attachments that are hated enough that we didn't mention, and I'll see you soon.